Sometimes show ideas are hard to come by, but Lou found 3: an over-the-top bolt-on subframe connector, the rebuilding of a manual transmission, plus the Le Mans advances with some undercoating you can do at home. Today on MuscleCar.
Big smile and don't look at it. Look at the camera first. Do your line and then go. Dolly, action.
A few weeks ago, Courtney's crew had some eye candy I had to take a look at. Highland Daytona Racing offers the only factory-built replica of the famous Daytona Coupe. More time, better material, and modern technology have enhanced this classic. This is the result of Rick Ellis and some of the best builders in the country. Suspension design and engineer guru Terry Satchel brought his skills to the table as well. These are made to order for the high-end crowd, definitely out of sight for the weekend warriors like us. But Rick is starting something we can aspire to. He's taking orders for the Highland G-Hawk, a completely restored and heavily modified second-generation Pontiac Trans Am muscle car. Using my greatest talent, charm, I convinced Rick to send us the prototype. It's not totally done yet, but close enough to drool over. The front spoiler, shaker scoop, and functional side vents aren't here yet, but the mechanics are. And you'll have some drivetrain options. You can keep it all Pontiac with an optional heavily modified 455 or place an order for a big block or small block Chevy. And there's 7 different transmissions to choose from, all the way from a turbo 350 to a 600 Tremec. But no matter what you pick, they'll all be housed in this chrome moly race-ready front clip. It gets rid of the radiator core support so the body mounts solid to the frame. The independent suspension shares the same geometry features as their Cobra Daytona with an infinite number of adjustments. What's not on the car yet is the rest of the framing. To strengthen up that unibody design is this bolt-in subframe connector and this rear suspension package, which gets rid of the leaf springs, converting it to a triangulated 4-bar setup. Again, the same suspension geometry that's on their Cobras. Here's what piqued my interest. This new front end ends exactly where the old one did, so you could bolt this connector right to your old subframes with no fabbing, no welding. Just drill a couple holes. It's triangulated with cross members, adding even more strength, and the dual rails allow for a lowered ride height. The back is designed to locate the new rear suspension and stiffen the rear of the car from side to side. I'm taking the leaf spring setup out in stages to keep things lined up. The top link brackets bolt to the existing snubber mounts. In fact, most of this installs using the existing holes. All but 2, that's it. With the rear end supported, the springs are out, and the lower link bracket and link are in. Additional support for the rear end comes from this lower shock and link brace. This upper shock mount is a one-piece design to handle the abuse. Finally, the lower link and these QA1 double adjustable coilovers with the correct spring rate for the Firebird. That's how it goes in. Here's what it does. This lower bar extends out further than the axle, allowing for longer links and greater shock travel, giving you the correct geometry designed by the legendary Terry Satchel. Bottom line, if a second-gen Firebird or Camaro project is in your plans and you don't have time to fabricate, this subframe connector along with this 4-link setup will be an option for you. But all that free time is going to cost you a little over $3 grand. Front clip, another 8. If you want a fully loaded turnkey G-Hawk Firebird, you're looking at around 85 grand. Now, Rick said he'd let us play with the first one when he gets it done. Stick around. See what we do after the break. We're back, and the G-Hawk is out of here. A few weeks ago, I showed you guys how to rebuild and modify a turbo 350 transmission. and I've been bombarded with emails ever since on how to rebuild a 4-speed. Well, now's as good a time as any. I recently rebuilt this Richmond Super T10. I'm going to show you that later, but first, here's how it works. A manual transmission works on mechanical power, unlike an automatic, which is hydraulic power. These gears are helicut gears, which means the teeth are in an angle. They're quieter than regular straight cut gears, and they make for a smoother shift. When you put your car in first gear, this is the gear that's working. You're cruising along, you hit second gear, this slider actually slides over and engages this gear here, which is second. Third gear, this slider moves, engaging this gear. When you're in fourth gear, all the gears are working as one, giving you a 1-to-1 ratio. Modifications are limited to swapping out gears. Rebuilds typically replacing worn-out synchros. You might think it's easier to work on than an automatic because there's less parts. Not really. A blown-apart automatic takes some concentration to reassemble, and you need some special tools to release some snap rings. The manual has some minor challenges as well. Plus, you need access to a press, and you'll need it with the first part to go on. New bearings for the housing. The first synchro and plate gear go on the output shaft. 3 keys under pressure from 2 snap rings gives the slider its tension. The first gear is on next. Back to the press again to join the mid plate and the bearing. A snap ring will keep it there. So far, pretty simple, but the counter shaft is next. All these tiny needle bearings go in by hand, or greasy fingers. Not just 1 stack per end, but 2. The more grease, the better the chance of them staying in place. Believe it or not, the counter shaft is 1 piece, cut on a lathe for strength. It rests in place till the input shaft finds its place, and the gears align. Now, cross your fingers that all these needles stay in place. 2 more rounds with the press to lock things in place. More needle bearings finish off the input shaft, making it ready for the output shaft. But not until it receives the 3rd gear and another set of synchros and a slider. You're on the home stretch now as the output slides in. Well, sorta. All the synchros and gears will line up. It just needs some persuasion. Then use the mid plate to lock it in. The reverse gears are simple, and same for the seal. Finally, the rear of the case finishes it off. Few shops will do this for you. Typically, they just swap it out. What's the fun in that? The parts are cheap, and if you can find someone to share a press with, you've got one more thing to brag about. A flashback is next.
Stick around. After the break, we've got a storm of cyclones the weatherman never saw coming. This week's MuscleCar Flashback, a double threat of 1969 cyclones.
In 1969, NASCAR was hawking only one male enhancer, American Steel. Unlike the homogeneous 150-mile-an-hour billboards running laps today, if you watch the race on Sunday, you could walk into the dealership on Monday and buy the same car that just took the checkered flag. Mercury's weapon of mass destruction in '69 was the Cyclone spoiler, but to increase its chances of taking the checkered flag, it needed a little help.
During the late 60s, there was a real development happening as far as aerodynamics in NASCAR racing.
A more aerodynamic front end was needed, but NASCAR mandated that at least 500 cars be made available to the public in order to race on the track. And the spoiler with its W-nose front end was a far cry from an aero nose car. The solution? Build a new spoiler.
The other car was the Spoiler 2, which had a hand-built aerodynamic front end.
The Spoiler 2 had to be built fast, and the opening races were quickly approaching. Cyclone spoilers were rolled off the assembly line and were taken into tents outside the factory for a nose job and some lipo.
The stock fenders were cut off in about this location, cut off here, and this piece hand-built and added on.
A Torino grill took the place of the old one, and some Ford van lights were tossed behind it since the new front bumper had no openings.
It's actually the rear bumper, which is taken and cut into 3 sections, re-welded, put a little V in it.
But it wasn't just the front end that needed some improvement. Spoiler 2s had to have the same ride height as their racing counterparts. NASCAR took that measurement from the rocker panel to the track.
By rolling this in and raising it, it allowed the race cars to be lowered an inch in all reality to achieve the distance that's on the spoiler. That allowed the cars a good several miles an hour on the super speedways and much better handling by being closer to the ground.
These cars came equipped with a 351 Windsor backed by a 3-speed automatic transmission. Outside, 2 paint schemes. The Dan Gurney Special was white with a blue top, and it was sold on the West Coast, while the Cale Yarborough Special was white with a red top, and it was sold east of the Mississippi. The W-nose spoiler was available with any engine transmission combination and was also made limited numbers as a Gurney or Yarborough Special. From the back, these cars look identical, and they are. The sloping fastback design smoothly directs air over the top of the car to the rear deck lid-mounted spoiler, which gives these Cyclones their name. Either one of these cars would make a great addition to any collection, but only the most diligent of Mercury collectors would have one of each. Richard Fleener spent years searching for both of these cars. His spoiler 2 is a Dan Gurney, and the spoiler, it's a Cale Yarborough.
And until we bought this car, we had never seen a Cale Yarborough car in person.
This extremely rare Merc is one of only 41 Cale Yarborough spoilers that was ever made, with a 428 Cobra jet and only one of 10 known to still exist. A C6 automatic was bolted up to handle the conservatively rated 335 horses. And the complete package rolls on a set of 14-inch wheels. Punch the throttle and nearly 2 tons of steel will race through the quarter mile in less than 14 seconds, with 0 to 60 times right around 6 ticks. That's of course if you can handle it.
You have to drive it. You don't just take and guide it down the road. You have to drive it all the time.
The bright red interior matches the color scheme outside. Bench seats front and rear make room for the driver, plus 5 more adrenaline junkies. It's hard to miss a sight like this, but in case you're not paying attention, the high flow exhaust that came standard on both spoilers should turn your head. Nowadays, you can still buy your favorite stock car, but I wouldn't recommend picking a fight with one of these at a red light. Stick around, there's more MuscleCar after the break. We're almost done for the day, and it's a little too late in the show to start anything in depth, so here's what we got going on. Frank ground the floor to suit his need for perfection. Etching primer applied, normal for raw metal, but also useful for the next step. To protect the underside of the car and act as a sound barrier, we're trying out Duplicolor's truck bed coating. It's a vinyl polymer base and is strong enough to use as undercoating. The cool thing is, you can do it yourself. You can get this little kit that comes with a roller, too slow for us. Or you can get this spray gun with an access lid. We're doing this now, before finishing the body, in case we get sloppy. This gun siphons the goo to the head. A standard airline is all you'll need. To save time, both me and Brent are packing. We're also wearing respirators. This coating requires having fresh air running through your shop. We don't. To protect the other people in here with us, we rolled in our Duster 3000 from Island Clean Air. It's like a portable prep room. Air is forced out of the top to start the circulating motion. Holes in the arm blow dust or fumes downward to be sucked in and filtered. OSHA and EPA friendly. You probably know a men's room that could use one of these. A few last-minute repairs and the coating continues. The same principle in painting applies. but instead of multiple thin coats, a little thicker is recommended. It helps with sound deadening and it dries super fast, like us. Today was definitely a plethora of projects, and there's still more outside. So what's in store for next week? If I knew, I'd tell you. We could finish off the Mustang with bodywork and paint. Overkill still needs to be wired up, and the interior is still in boxes. Major cool points there. Hiding up there is a '69 Firebird Convertible, soon to be a Trans Am clone with a twist. Think G-Machine. Underneath, a salvageable '61 Impala Coupe. A great find. Only 850 of these were built. Lots of opportunities there. And our latest arrival was literally found in our barn. A '64 Caliente, soon to be transformed into an old gasser. So you see my problem. These are all cool projects. Now on Monday, I'll stand out here a while and wait for one of them to talk to me. Until then, I'm out of here. Later.